Thank you very much all for you joining for today's fascinating panel discussion. I think that the topic at hand is the most critical one, which is how do you create a resilient future, especially around climate and using foresight to do that. I have two panelists here who are going to be discussing this, both very significant contributors to the next generation's view of where the UAE's thinking is going to go in terms of plotting a plan for the climate future. So maybe I'll start by just introducing them up to the stage. The first is Professor Hussein Al-Ahmad, who is a head of academics affairs at Dubai University. He has 39 years worth of experience in the area and a degree in engineering. So welcome to the panel. Our next panelist who's here is Dr. Saeed Al-Dahiri. He is the director for the Center of Future Studies at the University of Dubai. He also, as a side hustle, advises the World Economic Forum on future technologies and 4A IR. So quite a side hustle. Welcome to the panel. The way that we were going to start with this panel is allow each panelist to address a particular topic of their interest for approximately 10 minutes. And then we'll discuss some themes that come out of that. We were already having those discussions before this. And then we open it up to the floor to take any questions from there. So maybe what I should do is start with the first panelist, Dr. Hussein, or Professor Hussein. Thank you very much. You wanted to talk about the importance of university research in climate change.
Thank you very much, Ben. Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. As you know, the universities, they have a great role in looking at problems and finding solutions for any problems. And as you know, the climate change is causing great challenges for us, and particularly in Dubai or in the GCC, because the temperature is rising, the sea level is rising, and we have to do something. Otherwise, we will face disasters. So, University of Dubai. The first thing we started is even the building. Our building, which was ready in December 2015, smart green building. Why we make it a smart and green building? Because we want to minimize the use of energy. And this is why we want our students to learn, if the university can do it, they can do it in the future. In their organization, they can do it in their home. Because, we consume more than what is required. And as you know, the 70% on average of the consumption of energy is by the air condition. So if we can do something to reduce the amount of energy consumed by air condition, then we can do something towards the environment. But we didn't stop at that. In 2019, we installed a solar panel. And I'm glad to say that we are now net zero. Before that, we used to pay DEWA, I'm sorry for DEWA, we used to pay them 120,000 each month. Yeah, 1.2 million?
A
sorry,
year.
a year.
A year.
Sorry,
Yeah.
1.2 million a year. Yeah.
A year,
yeah.
yes.
So after installing the solar panels, now we pay them 180 dirham each month. Yeah. Now this is a great achievement by University of Dubai, because we are second university in the country, and not only in the country and the region, but in the world. because the first university with net zero is University of Hawaii. And many other universities, they have solar panels, but they don't get net zero. And this is important for the young generation. Not only that, but 5 years ago, we started a laboratory in collaboration with Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center for remote sensing. And the laboratory is looking at the environment in Dubai. We're looking at the urban expansion. We're looking at the vegetation. We're looking at the sea. We're looking at the environment, because as you know, Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, they have got many satellites. And it's not only Mohammed bin Rashid who has got satellite space center. DIO has got a satellite, which is monitoring the environment. Dubai municipality has got their own satellites called DMSat. So we have access to their data, and the whole thing is about collaboration. Because, you know, like some universities, unfortunately, and fortunately that this is not happening in UAE, but outside, you know, like the aim is just to publish papers to get promotion. But our aim is not. We want to do our research so that we serve the community. So this is why we are following the triple helix model. So it's always, you know, collaboration between academia, between government, and between the industry and the business sector. So in addition to Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center Laboratory, which looks at the environment, we have a scenario lab. And the scenario lab is an interesting thing, because in order to see or to make scenarios for the future, you don't want to predict the future, but you want to say, what if this happened? And one of the projects which we started last year, everybody now is talking about 1.5 degrees, you know, by 2050. But what will happen if the temperature rises by 3 degrees, 4 degrees, 5 degrees by the end of the century? So we are looking at different scenarios, and of course, you know, like because we have access to the data, because we collaborate with different entities in Dubai, we can see exactly which part of Dubai will be affected with the rising sea level. That's not only the thing which is happening. The temperature will rise. If the temperature rises by 3 degrees, your air conditioner at home will not be able to cope with this temperature. So it means that we have to do something. And again, with the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, they are working on that. Of course, you know, like you cannot increase the energy. We want, you know, like with the whatever we have today, can we cope with the rise in the temperature? And I think Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center solved this problem by using triple glazing, by using insulation, by raising the floor by 60 centimeters and using insulation. Then you can reduce the energy required for air conditioning today, but at the same time, you know, like in the future, if there is a rise in the temperature 2 degrees or 3 degrees, then we will be able we don't need to change the air condition. In addition to that, Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, we look at many projects, and one of them is to do with date palms. As you know, like the municipality in the old time, not now, they used to send somebody to the farms and count the date palms, 1, 2, 3, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. But now, instead of doing that, we're doing it by aerial images, and we developed AI, which recognize the date palms, separate them from the others, and we have in our database 3 million date palms. Because as you know, whenever you want to develop AI software, you cannot develop it with 100 date palms. You need millions of date palms. And this is the first phase of the project. The second phase of the project, we want to monitor the health of the date palms by, again, using aerial images. The other thing which we are working again with, and again, it's collaboration between us and a university in Italy. We are looking at the mangrove, because as you know, mangrove trees are important for the environment. And again, we are monitoring the mangrove trees in UAE because the number is increasing and the government needs to see what is happening and what will happen in the future. Now, one of the interesting things which we are working with, in addition to monitoring the environment, is assume that, you know, like tomorrow, again, when I say tomorrow, I'm talking about, you know, 50 years or 100 years, you know, the sea level rises by 2 or 3 meters. Again, you know, like Dubai, they have got the advantage that, you know, like, I mean, we buried the sea, we made the date palms. So it is possible, you know, like we can make, you know, like something, you know, similar to the crescent around the date palm to protect the coastal areas. Because as you know, the most expensive part of any city is the areas which are close to the sea. So you don't want to lose this part. But what will happen if we, again, one of the scenarios which we ask ourselves, can we make the sea level in the Gulf area less than the sea level in the Indian Ocean? And it is possible, but we have to close the Hormuz Strait. But of course, we don't want to close the Hormuz Strait because of the traffic. So we are, again, you know, we're putting a scenario where we have, you know, something similar to Panama Canal. So we have a lock, so then the sea level in the Gulf area will be lower than the sea level in the Indian Ocean, and the traffic can still continue. So these are examples of the projects which we are working, but the important thing is we are not doing these projects just to publish papers or to get promotion. These projects, we're doing them in collaboration with the Dubai government, with entities in Dubai, and at the end of the day, the business in Dubai will benefit from this, because we don't want, you know, like, I mean, if part of Dubai disappear, then business will be affected. We don't want that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm struck immediately by the externality, they call it in economics, which is, imagine if the Gulf became a highly saline part of the world as a result of being at a lower level, and that actually creates huge opportunities to collect sodium, which seems to be the new technology in battery tech. So not only are you potentially solving an immediate problem around rising sea levels, but you're also laying the ground for the Gulf to become a new industry leader in one of the major minerals needed in order to do battery storage. So on that note, I wanted to allow Dr. Saeed to talk about exactly the benefits and externalities of this by outlining whether systems thinking can solve the climate crisis.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really very happy to be with you here today for this panel that is organized by Trends Research and Advisory and the University of Dubai. I'm going to speak about this question. Can systems thinking solve the climate crisis? And I'm sorry to go to my notes. I've been from one event to another, almost on a daily basis. I'm at an event. So tomorrow I have two other events, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and I need to collect my thoughts and focus a little bit. But I'm going to speak about this from a couple of angles. So one is that climate change, we see it as a complex and wicked problem, and I'm going to explain what do we mean by that. Why do we need systems thinking to tackle climate crisis? And where systems thinking has been used to address climate crisis, and are we doing good enough here at COP28 in terms of bringing this approach, systems thinking, to solve climate crisis, and then my recommendations. So first, climate change is a complex and wicked problem. Climate change and the sustainability are complex, multi-level, multi-actor phenomena, characterized as a complex, adaptive, dynamic system with features emerging. We see emerging behavior. We see sometimes bifurcation, self-organization, maybe delay in terms of the response of what things happen when we intervene in nature and intervene with our policy making. And of course, feedback loops and non-linearity. So this is what really characterize a complex system. And climate crisis falls under something called wicked problems from the scientific and social viewpoint. And wicked problems are those that cannot be solved by conventional, reductionist, top-down approach, expert-driven approach. It requires a different approach to try to tackle climate crisis. Otherwise, we introduce something which we call it in systems thinking, fixes that fails. We try to solve something on a short term, and then we see side effects that can come and maybe make the problem either worse or will require, solving other problems. And I give you an example here. Of course, we all know self-driving cars, right? Not self-driving cars, sorry, electrifying transportation with, electric vehicles, and we introduced, of course, the lithium batteries as a way to run those, vehicles to generate the power for vehicles. So what happens now when we scale this in such larger scale? We need to look into, is this really contributing to, reducing carbon emission? Maybe, perhaps, yes. But what we're creating, on the other hand, we're creating a problem with the number of batteries, lithium batteries, that we need to bring millions, probably billions in the world. And then this becomes, unsustainable. So how we look into the whole, perspective of the system, so when we try to build a system, at least we tackle all these issues. And just want to remind us of the famous Einstein quote, where he says that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. We need definitely, a different way of thinking. If I look into the IPCC report, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, their latest report, of course, for 2023, the report calls for an action that is needed along numerous dimensions. So we need to think about all the dimensions, and we need solutions to be able to look into that. And here is really where systems thinking calls for an urgent system-wide transformation, and we need to work across all fronts at the same time, either from emission reduction on one side, we need to reduce emission, we need to look into renewable sources for energy on another, we need carbon capture and removal on a third, we need changing social behavior on another, we need food system transformation, we need the economic regenerative economy. So you can see the complexity when we try to solve this crisis across all those multiple fronts. And this will require, of course, effective collaboration and a new model of decision making. So, for example, when we look into the systems thinking, we look as a discipline, we want to see the whole, not just only the parts, and how the parts interconnect and interrelate to each other. So if you impact one part, how is this will have an effect or an impact on the overall system. And this is, we came from an engineering background, Dr. Isa, myself, we're electrical engineers, and we use this approach quite, heavily in our engineering discipline when we study, because you cannot separate the parts from looking into the whole picture. So with the system thinking, of course, it introduces something called system dynamics. And here where we need to look into climate modeling, how good we are in bringing a model that can incorporate all those factors. And when we do the if-then scenario, which Dr. Hussein here has talked about in terms of simulation, climate simulation, we can be as close as to the real situation. So the benefit of this, of course, is multiple. One is that we can look at, it will help us and amplify impact, answering important questions regarding, for example, how we can get clean carbon future, what it takes to reach net zero by 2050, what it will require from all governments, from all countries to reach this target by 2050, how we can achieve zero biodiversity loss, how we can achieve zero inequality, how we can achieve zero poverty, how we can achieve climate resilience. And systems thinking can help us to a great extent. It can help us also, identify leverage points. What are small changes that we can do which have a bigger impact? And this requires that we apply this approach in climate science. And I'm really, surprised that with what's happening really, and with systems thinking there, I'm going to speak about some of the practices. But when I looked into all of those IPCC's report for the last, since 2009, 2013, 14, 15, and I was looking for systems thinking. Is there a mention in system thinking? Although those reports are science-based, they were produced by many, maybe 100 of scientists around the world, but there is no mention of system thinking in those reports, which was really quite surprising to me. Where we see now system thinking being applied to solve climate change in a number of projects. One, the UNESCO have established something called Learning Labs, a biosphere program that is running, I think, in about 109 countries, but only 5 countries, they have established a systems thinking learning lab, Australia, Vietnam, Cambodia, and China. And it's a learning process, because when you start building those models and you start, doing if-then scenarios, it's a collective learning, that you try to understand the impact of one of these, elements on the overall system. Another example is from this initiative called Climate Interactive, working with MIT Sloan Sustainability Initiatives. They have produced climate simulation tools, one of which is called En-ROADS. This En-ROADS study the impact of policies on many other factors, like, for example, energy prices, temperature rise, air quality, sea level rise, and it's being used by many countries. It's being used by the United Nations Secretary Office, it's being used by the United States, it's being used by the Chinese government, and also is being used by 160 countries around the world. Where do we see today systems thinking in this event, in COP28? I think in the past, almost talking about today is the 8th or 9th day in COP28. There have been 4 events, and I think this is the event number 4. On the second day, on December 2nd, there was an event called Compass Education with the Green Education Partnership. Compass Education is an initiative which tries to bring systems thinking teaching across schools and to educate teachers about system thinking. Green Education is a partnership, is another worldwide initiative which try to prepare every learner to acquire the knowledge, skills, values, attitudes to tackle climate change and to promote sustainable development through systems thinking. So this was an event that happened On 2nd of December, it was broadcasted live across the world, and they engaged with teachers. So they look into the system, the Earth system, in 4 different components. They look into the nature, what happens to the nature and the environment, the economy, the well-being, and society. And if you do a change somewhere here with a policy, how is that is going to impact the economy? How is it going to impact the well-being? So it's a huge model based on many interconnections between different components. The second, I'm sorry I'm taking longer time, but I guess we are 2 here. We have maybe leverage of time, but I'll try to finish soon. There was another event on December 7 here on COP28. Climate Interactive, again, which I have mentioned, they have produced this a climate simulation tool. They had a workshop on one of their simulation tools called En-ROAD, climate workshop, where they have engaged not just only here with the UAE in COP28, but also across the world in terms of looking and trying to simulate some of the scenarios, of policy making. What if we're gonna, enact this policy? How is that going to affect the rising temperature to above 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees, and like maybe Dr. Hussein said, to more than 2 degrees? What this will impact the overall system. There was another event, I think yesterday on December 8, before yesterday, today is December 10. Session by the University of Sharjah on climate action simulation and role play. So this was another event that was happened here. And of course, our event today about, which I'm focusing on, about how important it is to use systems thinking to tackle climate crisis. I think my final recommendations here that we need to promote system thinking for policymakers and for decision making on climate action. We need to educate our policymakers about the importance of this, a scientific approach using system thinking. And of course, our future generations, the most important, the future generations are going to live in the future. So we've conducted a session actually last week with the University of Cambridge called The Future of Schooling. And we are looking, we brought those children, 15, 17 years old, and they seem to be very much concerned about their future, how they are going to live in 10, 20 years, when looking into the IPCC report saying that within the end of this decade, by 2030, we are going to reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius, regardless of what we do today. We cut emissions, no matter of what we do, we're gonna reach that 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of this decade. And imagine, the disasters that are going to happen, the natural disasters, and how it's going to impact our children. Even some of the students said, if we go to Mars, because we keep saying that, yes, maybe we're gonna probably in the future, I don't know, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, we're gonna leave Earth and we're gonna go to Mars. Are we really gonna make Mars a better place than Earth? Need to ask. We are humans, right? And whatever we do, it impacts our choices. So going to Mars, are we gonna not pollute it the same we have polluted the Earth? And these are concerns from our young children. So my final remarks is that I think system thinking is a very powerful tool. We need to promote it across, policymakers. They need to understand how we can leverage on this technique to at least help us make better decisions when it comes to climate crisis and climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saeed. Before we open the questions up to the floor, I just wanted to potentially discuss some points that came out of this. I think both of you highlighted the importance of education and education leading in terms of how do you get a net zero building, or how do you get people to deal with systems thinking. And as a result, I'd like to reiterate this. You probably have the toughest job in the world. You're teaching people how to cope in the future. And so where does one start trying to figure out how you build the new elements that are coming through systems thinking as a new process? How do you address the obviously the skills needs associated with the new technologies that are coming through? Maybe Dr. Hussain, you could start from your perspective.
Yeah. Well, of course, we started this long time ago by incorporating sustainability in all our courses. So whether you are doing an engineering or you're doing a business or you're doing a law, you need to know something about sustainability because sustainability is important. The second thing is the use of artificial intelligence because artificial intelligence is, I know a lot of people are frightened from artificial intelligence. They're saying that we're going to lose our jobs, but if we are flexible, we are not going to lose our jobs because we're going to use artificial intelligence in order to do our jobs more efficiently. And this is one of the important things. The other thing which actually last week we had collaboration with the University of Cambridge, we need to teach our kids climate laws because this is an important topic. Everybody should be familiar with the regulations, the policies regarding the climate change, and even the engineering societies, they are taking the climate change seriously. For example, the largest society, which is the Institution of Electrical and Electronic Engineer, the IEEE, now they have climate change on their agenda. So my background is in engineering and I am a signal processing and remote sensing. I can now talk to people about, I can talk to my cousins, my aunt about climate law. I couldn't talk to her about, engineering things because of the importance of the topic. And I think we need to educate the general public because sometimes I'm a little bit sad that that the majority of the general public, they don't take climate change seriously. And I think I'm really glad that COP28 brought this at least to people in the Middle East or in the GCC. Now everybody is taking climate change seriously after COP28 because by after 50 years or 100 years, I will not be around. But I want, my children, my grandchildren, I want them to have the same life like I had. I don't want them to end up, in disasters or as Dr. Saeed, even we don't want, to go to Mars. We want to keep this earth. We want to preserve our environment. And I think it is possible, but we need, to spread the message. And I'm sure, the universities, especially in UAE, I think we are taking this seriously. Thank you.
Dr. Saeed, do you want to add?
Yes, yes. I think what Dr. Hussain here is saying is that it's all about awareness, and education here plays an important role when it comes to creating awareness. I think now, many people around the world and even in the education are talking about environmental learning becomes something necessary, to educate our children in the future. Not just only environmental learning, but, looking into the whole perspective of system thinking and bringing this to the school. So this is where we see these movements, education greening initiatives and the Compass educations are trying to build this across the schools, trying to teach teachers the system thinking so they can teach the children. What we do here at the University of Dubai, and this is at the center, at least Future Studies, the centers that we established 4 years back, is that we want to bring these approaches, systems thinking, alternative futures, scenario planning, and horizon scanning when we look into the future. And the point that the title of this session, Climate Foresight, is really to bring the science of foresight to the climate science, to the climate change, to the climate crisis. How we can, the whole world is talking about systemic change consistently, but what are those systemic changes? And how, when we look into systemic change, what's more, like I said, leverage points that we can really use to make a bigger and much wider impact. This is where systems thinking comes in place, and this is where we try to build capacity, training people in the government, in the private sectors, across the education. We've conducted so many events, at least a couple of, maybe 3 or 4 events with the schools. One was last week, and before that was a workshop where we brought private students from private schools here in Dubai, around 40 students, and we took them into the journey where we showed them how to use the tool to at least draw different scenarios for the future, from transformational to preferred future to catastrophic futures, and listening to them, debating each other and talking about, what we do as human on Earth that will impact, their future in the future was really, amazing, listening to those children with very critical insight and debate, even when it comes to the technology of ChatGPT and so forth, how they perceive these technologies, impacting their education. So in a nutshell, I think, building capacity is much more important, trying to bring this to the forefront of everyone, understanding what is system thinking, how we can apply it to solving. You have an elephant in the room. How you want to solve this problem? You cannot, of course, cut the elephant and get it out of the room. So you have to find different approaches, to solving this. And I think, system thinking is one of those approaches which can help us dramatically in solving climate crisis, hopefully, in the future. Yeah. Yes.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think as somebody who's worked in starting up businesses, one of the most critical steps in thinking of a new business model or thinking of a new solution that you can take to market is applying systems thinking. And I suppose that's the next step in this process is you've now got people who've generated these new amazing insights about what's going on, how the economy is going to be changing, how those opportunities are arising, how the threats are occurring. How are you seeing the ecosystem that supports the response to this in a practical, scalable way through starting businesses, through changing regulations, through focusing on building new industries? How have you seen that that process work in the UAE as a result of your new centers? Maybe start with Dr. Saeed.
Yeah, I think this is an important question. I think we need to look at the whole ecosystem, how this ecosystem supports, this direction, at least, being aware of the environment and being aware of all these changes that can take place. Of course, it comes from education, but not just only the education. Dr. Hussein here mentioned the triple helix, where government, industry, and academia work together to bring this change, across the society. We work with the industry, we work with the government, and one thing which I really want to emphasize, as part of what I teach here at Mohammed bin Rashid School of Government, Public Policy on Science and Technology, is bringing awareness to policymakers about these tools and about new ways of innovating in policy making, which can make a much more wider impact on the whole ecosystem. And one of which, of course, is the policies that are being enacted, to support this whole ecosystem. In the UAE, there have been many policies that the government have come up with in the past couple of years, where they support, of course, education. For example, we see now at least some elements of this in the schools, in the environment. I look into the curriculum of my daughter. 15 years old in grade 10, and my son, 10 years old, in grade 6. And I see there are some elements about educating children about the environment and how, and even building, artifacts. For example, take the lids of these and try to design something that could be sustainable, and this really teaches the children something important, is that we need to be environmentally cautious. We need to look into the environment. So one part of the whole this ecosystem is, of course, the education. The other part, of course, government when it comes to sustainability. And I give you another example. And we've seen this in South Korea. South Korean, they came up with a policy for the government called green procurement. And green procurement encouraging the government to buy from those, companies who support sustainable and green products, and give them incentives in terms of, getting or doing procurement with companies who support sustainability. And I think we need similar policies here for the government. So another thing is about, when you look into the education as a whole, there is a big movement going towards, sustainable education. Dr. Hussein mentioned that University of Dubai is maybe the second campus, but there is a pledge that we saw now for 2025, more than 1,000 universities are going to be net zero in the next 2 years. So imagine doing this on a bigger, larger scale on the whole world, transferring our schools into sustainable schools, transferring our universities into sustainable universities. How that will impact, carbon reduction and, emission, and of course, reaching to the target in 2050 to, being net zero, it's going to play a bigger role. Of course, one hand, we say, does not clap. We need collaboration across. And I think, from the ecosystem perspective, we need to look into the entire ecosystem and how we can make this influence across, whether it's government, whether it's private sector, whether it's companies, and the different players, and whether it's societies. One part, of course, is our habits, what we do in a society as people who live on a society. Are we really making our practices sustainable, or are we contributing, to, again, rising emission in the society? I think we need to look across the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I may add, I think also we need to learn from history. And this is one of the things which we always teach our students in the first semester when they come to University of Dubai. And many people, they are not aware of this. Many people, when you ask them, when Dubai started, they say 50 years. I would say to them, no. Dubai started 3,500 years ago. If you look at what happened, 3,500 years ago, this part of the world was making bronze, not for the Emirates. No, they were exporting it to Egypt, to Mesopotamia, to Syria. But at the same time, where are they making the bronze? They were making the bronze as Saruq al-Hadid. Now, if you go today to Saruq al-Hadid, you will find it's just desert. Now just think, 3,500 years ago, how did they make the bronze? They must have lots of trees. They must have water. But now what happened? Nothing. So our ancestors, they ruined the environment 3,500 years ago. Obviously, the Emirates 3,500 years ago was green, plenty of water. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to make the bronze. Please just go and visit Saruq al-Hadid Museum in Shandaga. You find more than 10,000 artifacts left. But just think how many artifacts were sold to Egypt, were sold to Mesopotamia, to Syria, or to other parts of the world. What we tell the students, it was like Jabal Ali, but 3,500 years ago. Because they were making the bronze, they were selling the bronze, because the bronze was not for the Emirates, it was for exports. And you might say, do we have evidence? Yes, we have evidence. We found the hieroglyphic stamps. We found the Sumerian stamp, the Akkadian stamps there. Because, you know, like this consignment will go to Egypt. Stamp it with the hieroglyphic. This consignment is going to the south of Iraq. Stamp it with Sumerian cuneiform stamp. This one will go to Akkadian. Stamps with Akkadian. We need, you know, like to make our children aware of what happened in the past, because we don't want them to repeat the same mistake. Because who caused this mess? It's us, by using technology. And at the same time, you know, like we can use technology to solve this mess. Thank you.
I think that's a really important point. Is that if you look back over recent history in the UAE, you've had those similar cycles occurring. You've had pearl diving being replaced and collapsing with oil, and now we're going through another cycle. It's almost what is the next opportunity that we should be taking advantage of, and what externalities or damage are we going to potentially create for future generations if we don't get this right? I think that that's absolutely critical. I'm conscious of time, and there might be some questions that come from the floor. Does anybody want to ask? Excellent.
So first of all, I want to thank the panelists for this fruitful discussion. And my question is actually for Dr. Said. So, Doctor, you talked about climate simulation and climate modeling.
Yes.
This is a two-part question.
Right.
I want to ask you, do you think that climate simulation is a feasible solution to climate mitigation? And could you expand more on the term of climate modeling? Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. I think it's a good question. Do I think that climate simulation is a good solution to a climate crisis? Well, yes, indeed, Sultan. When we look into that's why when I said system thinking, you look into a complex adaptive dynamics, because you study the relationship between the different parts, and you try to model this with mathematics, differential equations mostly, and you build a huge, big model. The model which was built by Climate Interactive in association with MIT Sloan Sustainability Initiative, it was tested, it was verified, peer-reviewed, at least, from a science perspective, and it was, simulated, and you can really look into, if-then scenarios, which Dr. Hussein is saying that. What? Okay, in order to limit the temperature rise to reach 1.5 degrees Celsius, what do we need to do, on other things? And you start looking into this, and you start looking, okay, here what we need to do when it comes to carbon reduction. This much we need to reduce carbon, globally. This is what we need to do in our food system. But unfortunately, building this complexity, you cannot, build this complex modeling, so you instead try to do it in a part by part basis. So you look into the food system, for example, and you try to build, a model for the food system, and you try to build a model for let's say energy, how you want to reduce, how you want to reach net zero by 2050. But collectively, when doing this and you running this simulation exercises, definitely gives you an insight, at least to the policymakers, to the decision makers, that when they make decisions, they make decisions based on some informed, based on some data. When it comes, climate modeling is the same. What I meant by climate modeling and simulation, climate modeling is actually you building a model for the climate that can look into the different components and interrelationship between the system that will help you transform this into a simulation tools. And we have nice simulation tools. I have mentioned the Climate Interactive. We have another one, Compass Education, again by the Compass Education and the Greening Initiative, which they have built a compass. They call it Sustainability Compass, based on 4 elements: nature, economy, society, and well-being. And within each of one of these components, there are subcomponents that interact with each other.
If I may add, if you look at today, we have 2 scenarios. One scenario is the temperature will rise by 1.5 if everybody else because we are not polluting the environment. It's the US, Europe, China, India, they are the polluters of the environment. That's one scenario. The second scenario, what if the temperature rises by more than 1.5? And we need to be prepared for both scenarios.
Right.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Said, for your input, and Professor. My question is that I was wondering if maybe one of the solutions is to utilize the supercomputers. If I don't miss my guess, the supercomputers is do simulations for like the minimal crisis to the larger crisis.
Right.
I'm aware that there is a political implementation, but maybe this is one of the solutions to have a supercomputer that solves or at least give you as an insight.
Yes.
Therefore, my question is that why we don't have it here in the United Arab Emirates, or is there any plans of using such a technology here? Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. Sultan or Sultan. Both sultans are sitting close to each other. Great. Sultan, we have a supercomputer in the UAE. At least, we used to have one long time ago with ADNOC, create supercomputer for doing all this seismic studies and simulation, okay, for oil exploration. But we have one with G42. Okay, it's ranked 26, at least maybe 2 years ago. It's ranked 26 in the world. I know that G42 recently worked with the Cerebros, I think company called Cerebros, building a data center in Abu Dhabi with the supercomputing facilities. So yes, I think, and not just only this, but also Abu Dhabi have announced 3 years ago and is still working on it with the Technology Innovation Institute about building a quantum computer. When that is going to be available, definitely, with the quantum computing today, we can simulate a very big, huge models, and get maybe simulation in real time. So yes, advancement in technology, especially on the hardware, on the computing side, is advancing tremendously. I'm quite unhappy with the AI and the sustainability issue of AI, because the whole world is talking about AI, and AI is going to do this and that, and AI, yes, it's true to a certain extent. We can do all nice prediction with AI, but AI also consumes a lot of energy and power. And this is now becomes a sustainability issue with large language models, with generative AI, such as GPT-4. The amount of power hungry that GPT-4 takes for training, it's comparable to entire cities. How you can cool, those big, huge data centers. Yes, there are solutions. They're talking about renewables and so forth. But as long as we are building huge models, as long as we are feeding those models with, I don't know what you want to call it, gigabits of data, those models are going to consume, a lot of energy. How to make it sustainable? There are definitely, the industry is working on chips that are consuming less power. They are talking, and of course, using renewables. But I think we need, when we speak about, and this is when I say fixes that fail. We try to bring solutions and say, yes, AI is going to help us solve the climate change. But AI requires, imagine every single interaction today you use with a ChatGPT, you consume this much of water. For each question. Now, replicate this across the millions of transactions, and how much, energy and water that you spend on this. So I think we need to look, and I'm not saying that the industry is not doing, things about it. There is a lot of things, of course, when it comes to how to make AI sustainable. Like I said, they're trying to produce chips which consumes, less amount of energy. NVIDIA is leading, this game, and we can see maybe in the future better solutions, hopefully, that which will make AI more sustainable.
If I may add also, as you know, AI is based on your previous data. AI is not going to come with something outside the box. And I think what we need, especially from young people, we need new ideas. We need them to think outside the box.
I think we've run out of time, and I think that that's a great way to end this panel. Thank you both for attending this, and thank you very much for sharing your insights. And I look forward to collaborating with you on a range of challenges that are probably going to be set over the next few years around climate. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.